Round number 2 about to be underway here between two very, very good friends in Gerry Thompson and Tom Ross. Thompson on your left. He's 0-1 with Grixis Control. Tom Ross is on your right. He is 1-0 with lands.
I saw a Twitter post from Gerry Thompson when the brackets were announced of 2 lands players in my bracket. You've got to be kidding me.
Yeah. It's a tough road to hoe here for Gerry T. Tom appears to be on 6. These players will be given the green light here in just a moment. And now it is a gamble here for Ross. Aptly named card given his deck selection this weekend.
Although, in this kind of deck, not much of a gamble.
No, not so much.
As your graveyard is an extension of your hand if things are going the right way.
1 through 5, little randomization, and Ross will lose a card. He'll lose card number 5. It looks like it was a Bajuka Bog. Probably not too big of a loss there, as Thompson will draw a card for the turn. Thompson does have a copy of Wasteland in hand. It's funny. You think about, I'm playing against lands. Wasteland really not really an option to do anything against them, but it is in play.
So here's the thing. Ross has already mulliganed, and he's gambled away a land. So he's really he's potentially very lean on just total lands. And look, Thompson's got to steal this. If he tries to play a straight up game and play a bunch of turns, especially with Ross having access to Loam, he's not winning that. But it's possible that Ross just can't play Magic. He can't get it off the ground. He loses one of his lands. He loses potentially his only green source of mana. That's a path.
Yeah. Now there's a Thespian stage. For Thompson, he'll play a Deathrite Shaman and pass the turn back. This is an avenue.
This is a great opening here for Thompson.
Life from the Loam, the draw there for Ross. And it looks like he does have Punishing Fire and a Taiga as well, so things have gotten pretty difficult.
Yeah, I mean, Punishing Fire is also a lot on Thompson's deck. To be polite.
And now here is Punishing Fire. That will take care of Deathrite Shaman. We'll head back over to Gerry Thompson. He'll draw a card. Picked up a young Pyromancer. He'll sacrifice a Bloodstained Mire. Badlands is the weapon of choice, so he's got all the colors of mana. He'll play the Pyromancer, I believe. Yes, he will. He'll shuffle his deck, present it to Tom. We'll head back over to the boss. The boss will draw a copy of Wasteland. I believe the second one of those he's picked up this game, so he could start attacking Gerry Thompson's lands, but what he doesn't know is that Thompson has plenty of them in hand as he fires off a Wasteland.
But over the long stretch, Thompson can't keep up with Wasteland being looped either. I would assume that his list has no basic lands in it. Usually the Tropical Island Badlands decks can't afford to have a whole lot of basics floating around, and that is the case.
Here's Life from the Loam. It's going to get back Bajuka Bog, Grove of the Burn Willows, and Wasteland. The thing that Tom is missing here is a way to play multiple lands in one turn. You're not going to find Exploration or Mana Bond just yet as Thompson comes across for 2.
But even looping Punishing Fire is plenty good in this spot, and if Thompson runs out of threats, then Ross can go and turn to Wasteland.
Here's another young Pyromancer. Pass the turn back. Ross will draw a card. No interest in dredging at this stage for the boss. He picked up a copy of Ghost Quarter.
And I think Ross probably thinking the same thing you just described. He's got stuff to do with his mana this turn, so he doesn't necessarily need to loam. And if he hits a cheat, if he hits something like Exploration, then he's in easy mode. Game's very, very easy to play at that point. And Ross still has to respect Thompson's ability to go wide. You know, if Thompson plays a couple spells, it's not like Ross has any sort of lock going. He doesn't have the Tabernacle of Pendrevale, so even drawing a Maze of Ith isn't worth a whole lot.
Yep. Going to get back the Punishing Fire and take care of a young Pyromancer. That's down.
Big win there for Ross. I mean, if he gets, if there's some sort of counterspell there and Thompson gets to make a bunch of tokens, that's a path for Ross to fall behind.
For sure. 3 cards on the way here for Thompson. Via Brainstorm. We've also got an Elemental token out there. Again, in a spot like this, and I totally agree with the term that you use, not my favorite word in having to cheat a win, but that's exactly what it is.
Right.
He's got to find a way to just cheat, find a way to victory.
Anytime Thompson can get in a spot where it's, if I make this play, there's a chance that Ross's hand just shuts down for some reason, he's got to throw those kind of punches.
Yeah.
Trying to play straight up Magic here in a matchup this bad, I don't think is a good path.
Well, that'll just get you 20 out of the building.
Right.
That's what happens there.
Or all your lands are blown up.
Yeah.
Or all your creatures are dead. Or all of it.
Yeah. Here's Polluted Delta. Now, Thompson can continue to present a pretty healthy amount of pressure here. He's going to sacrifice his fetch line. I believe he has Gurmag Angler plus Deathrite Shaman in hand. And if that's the case, that's not bad.
That is really good.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a... he's good against Mazavith. He's good against the Tabernacle.
There's Deathrite Shaman. Here is Gurmag Angler. This is real pressure. He's going to lose a lot of his graveyard in order to do this. And it's not going to trigger Young Pyromancer because they're creatures, but this is still plenty fine here for Thompson. And now Ross, he might have to peel something like a Dark Depths here to get himself out of the situation.
Another thing to keep in mind here, with a Deathrite Shaman, it is possible that even if Ross does spike a Dark Depths to go on with the Thespian Sage, Thompson can get above 20, and then maybe that's enough to push the race over.
Yeah. Ross is going to Dredge Loam, Exploration, Mana Bond, and Misty Rainforest going to the graveyard. And it's funny because I think he would have really liked to have drawn that Exploration that turn.
Definitely.
You don't know what's on top of the deck, of course, but I'm sure he would have liked to have drawn that. And now what's interesting here is, okay, now the Punishing Fire stuff is a little too slow. Now the Wasteland stuff is a little too slow.
Well, Ross needs to do two things in a turn, and he can kind of only do one right now. Well, that's not entirely true because he can Punishing Fire and Wasteland each turn, but that's not a great path against Gurmag Angler now.
And what are you targeting with that Punishing Fire? Are you taking care of Young Pyromancer or are you taking care of Deathrite Shaman? That's a real question,
Well, I
too.
think the priority has to be Deathrite Shaman first, because then if you kill the Young Pyromancer, then the Deathrite Shaman takes care of the Punishing Fire. You take 2 damage for your trouble, or the Loam, rather, as well, and then that weapon's cut off. Still, that's a lot of damage. You can see that Ross has all the pieces to lock Thompson out of this game. He's got Loam, a lot of land destruction, Punishing Fire, Barbarian Ring. That's kind of the recipe. But it's not clear he has enough time to deploy all this stuff without exploration or some other way to cheat all of his lands into play.
Punishing Fire is going to come back. Going to cast that. There goes Deathrite Shaman. Wasteland at the ready. I don't know if Jerry's a favorite right now, but he's in a pretty darn good spot.
You can't ask for a whole lot better, given that Ross had a functional hand.
Yeah. Brainstorm in hand to follow up with. He's going to maybe start by attacking, but instead he'll start by brainstorming. Another elemental token here. He'll draw 3 cards, put 2 back here momentarily. Ponder Force of Will among them.
And that's a huge find right there for Thompson, because he can finish this game off in 2 turns. And the Force of Will means that if Ross, let's say, dredges Loam and then finds Mazavith, Tabernacle, Dark Depths, you know, you can't Force of Will Loam forever, but you can do it once. And if you got enough pressure going, that might be good enough.
There's an attack for 8. Ross is going to fall down to 8. So the scary thing here for Gerry Thompson is if Tom Ross draws exactly Dark Depths, will he even take a draw step? That's a question as well. Ponder Forceful right now in the hand for Gerry Thompson. Ross, will he dredge or will he draw? He will draw, and he has found a Mox Diamond.
I believe his hand is a dead end, and Thompson has a Force of Will. I mean, Ross will give this a gander, but I think he's just looking at a hand of Stone Rains right now.
I think you might be correct. Punishing Fire can only be cast once.
Yep.
It's not going to take care of Gurmag Angler, we know that. Here's a Mox. That's on the stack. We'll see if Thompson lets this resolve. It's easy for us to say, yes, he should. But it's not always that easy when you're in the position at the table.
I imagine he's saving this counter for Loam if there's something threatening in the graveyard, or crop rotation / gamble.
Here's Barbarian Ring. That's going to take care of Young Pyromancer. He might find a way to buy himself another turn.
Yep. But remember, you know, at this point, if Ross falls to 1 from the ensuing attack, Tabernacle's no good, and Mazavith's no good. And even making a Dark Depths token is no good. So he's still stuck in the bind of needing to do multiple things, and seemingly only having a route to do 1.
Thompson might be sacrificing Polluted Delta on upkeep, and he is. So he's going to fall down to 20 again, it appears. He's been given a little bit of life here by Tom from the Groves. Punishing Fire is going to come back. It's going to take care of an elemental token. And Gerry lets that resolve. A little surprised?
No, it does matter because the difference between Ross going to 1 and 3 creatures being in play, or going to 2 and 2 creatures in play, now means that Dark Depths is live. But there are so many spells that Thompson has to respect at this point, a Dredge Loam finding something significant, or crop rotation, that he's got to, I think he's just got to take the L on that one. It does sting a little bit, but he can't pick that kind of fight unless he's attacking for lethal.
Cabal Therapy was the draw. It's interesting. I've got this real premium on wanting to put Tom exactly to 1 right now. If I have 2 tokens and a Gurmag Angler, if I put him to 1, Dark Depths is no longer an out. Maybe there's some things I'm not considering that could be an out in this situation.
Is Glacial Chasm something that could come into play?
It could work its way into the equation. Got to check the deck list. Tom does have 1. You see Thompson play Cabal Therapy. Tom Ross's hand is a Life from the Loam, Bajuka Bog, and a Ghost Quarter. And Thompson still with Force of Will plus Ponder.
I think to Force of Will there, you have to be thinking, he literally can't win if I put him to 1 here, and I just don't think that's the case. Oh, no. Oh, no. Well, that was the draw. That's the draw that punishes you for not Force of Willing there.
It gets interesting. Gerry at 21, not 20. But there's a Dark Depths off the top.
I mean, that is the risk right there.
Yep.
This card would not be good before. It may be good now. And remember, Ross can make up the point that he's missing there with the Punishing Fire in the graveyard.
Thompson will untap.
He can net 1 damage out of that, and Thompson's at 21.
Force of Will in Ponder in hand.
Still drawing to Lightning Bolt.
Yep. And now Tom almost has to make his move with Dark Depths now because he has to fear Wasteland.
Yes.
And he will make his move with Dark Depths and Thespian Stage and make a 20/20. And so now it's Gerry Thompson's turn to top deck. He'll draw a card. Baleful Strix.
That is not bad.
That's not nothing.
That is not bad.
The card Gerry is very well known for playing. I think he's gonna start with Strix, it looks like. Okay. Draw a card. Brainstorm. That's redraws. We're getting interesting now.
Yep. And he's got potentially a lot of looks at Lightning Bolt now.
Yep. Thompson's going to go to Ponder. Top 3. Wasteland, Force of Will. There's Deathrite Shaman hanging out over there. Oh, boy. Is that a keep or a shuffle?
The Wasteland here is not bad. Coming off the, he does have to be concerned about Grove recursion too.
Yep. What's also interesting about this too is, okay, so Gerry's at 21. Force of Will brings him down naturally to 20. But if Tom wants to get back Grove now, it's going to push Gerry back up. It's going to push him up another life.
22. And he can Force of Will the Punishing Fire. There's no Grove unless he's willing to Loam.
Correct.
This is just taking some time, and Ross is at 2 and can't survive the next attack the way things currently look.
So it's interesting in that Baleful Strix may have just been a much better draw than we gave it credit for.
No, I thought Strix was really solid in that spot. Thompson's still shuffling away. I think the problem is that he's got Brainstorm in hand right now, and because it's not clear if Wasteland's good enough, but Lightning Bolt certainly is, just give yourself a lot of looks at it.
Sure.
In fact, I would have led, I think, with the Ponder over the Strix in Gerry's spot, just to have the most possible shots at just bolting him out of the game that turn.
He picked up a Force of Will off of the Ponder, so 2 blue cards in hand. Tom's going to give him a life. He'll draw a card, another Grove. We'll see how that works its way into the equation here. Will Gerry be killed by his own avatar token?
I think as things currently stand, he's in good shape. Because he can Force of Will the Punishing Fire and attack for lethal. And I do not think Ross can cut off this line.
Jerry's got a pretty good idea what Tom is working with, given the Cabal Therapy a couple of turns ago. As you mentioned, lands is generally, it's a deck where its graveyard is an extension of its hand, so you're working with, for the most part, pretty good information when you play against them. It's the fact that most of the time you can't do anything about what they're doing. The boss will do some mathing, and he will play Punishing Fire. I think now we're going to see the Force Will. Yes, we will. Thompson will fall down to 21. He wants to keep that Baleful Strix there. Punishing Fire will be countered.
And I think we've hit an actual dead end here.
I think so, too. There's Bojuka Bog. Graveyard's gone. And Ross will pass the turn back. So now it's on Thompson to make the attack. Again, when you're working with really good information, as Gerry is right now, given he knows Tom's hand, he's got access to the deck list before the match starts. It's easy for us to say, all right, just turn them all sideways and do that. But, again, when you're at the table, things are a lot different.
Yep, good gut check here. This seems safe to me.
Yeah. Here's an attack with everybody. And that is going to do it. Gerry Thompson is going to win game number 1 here over Tom Ross. Grixis Control will steal the first game over lands as we get ready here for game number 2. Entertaining game there, to be sure.
Yeah, that was great. Thompson got the draw that he needed with a lot of pressure. Ross never got to really cheat. Get any enablers to cheat extra lands into play. Had the tools to lock Thompson out over the long haul, but was never really able to do 2 things in a turn and get over the hump.
Sideboards we go for Tom Ross. A Chalice of the Void, 3 Sphere of Resistance, 4 Tireless Tracker, 4 Corrosive Grip, a Punishing Fire, a Besaiger who shelters all, and a Crocus. Yeah, I'll tell you, it looks a lot like what Daryl Ayers was up to a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, this is a lot of anti-combo measures, a little bit of anti-control. I think the extra copy of Punishing Fire is very easy to bring in here. I think the Besaiger is fine. Tireless Tracker may be solid for this matchup, and if nothing else, forcing Thompson to leave in some creature removal is valuable. But the anti-combo Chalice of the Void, Sphere of Resistance, I doubt that will be coming in this matchup.
We go to Gerry T, and he's got an Ensnaring Bridge, 2 Pithing Needle, a Baleful Strix, and his Static Caster, 3 Abrupt Decays, a Diabolic Edict, a Pyroblast, 3 Surgical Extractions, a Cabal Therapy, and a Painful Truth. Very clearly not preparing for this matchup and really looking to take care of a lot of the Pharaoh decks that we've seen players play. That said, he is up a game and might be able to change some things.
Well, he's got a decent sideboard for the matchup. 3 copies of Surgical Extraction, that's the top of the list. Way to break up Loam and interact with the graveyard generally. Those will be coming in. He's got a couple fringe options here. I think there's enough activated abilities in Ross's deck that the 2 copies of Pithing Needle are fine to bring in. And I can even get behind the 1 copy of Diabolic Edict. No, you can't answer Thespian Sage plus Dark Depths over the long haul over and over again. But if we saw what happened last game where Thompson's able to get onto the battlefield, put Ross into some pressure, then 1 removal spell or 1 counter spell can be decent.
And those are the options there for both players as we get ready here for game number 2. And now it's time for one of our favorite things here. It's time for StarCityGames.com Game Night.
Okay.
Now, you know most of these. I think you actually know them all already, but it doesn't make it any less fun that we got some cool stuff here in December and for 2017.
Yeah, head over to go.starcitygames.com/game night to find more information out about Game Night. Every month, we send out new kits with these pins and tokens to the stores that are set up for Game Night. Stores can then run Game Night any day of the week they want, any format. Just get players in the store on a regular basis for some fun and friendly magic. This is the December kit. Playing for now, it's Fin Tuition. Then we have a couple more kits coming down the pipeline here. In January, we have Squeaky Cheeky Acorn Breaker. Bit of a mouthful. Get it. And in February, Corgi Firewalker. Beloved. Go to StarCityGames.com/game night. Find the Game Night closest to you. Stores, if you want to get signed up, contact your Star City Games in-store play representative.
Game number 2 about to be underway here between Gerry Thompson and Tom Ross, 2 of the SCG Tour's very, very best, arguably the 2 best of all time. Good friends, love competing, love playing Magic, love to watch them play when they do play against each other. For Gerry Thompson, Grixis Control, the weapon of choice here in Legacy for him. Saw him a lot during Season 1, a little during Season 2, not a ton during Season 3 as he qualified during Season 1, but it's a storied career here for Gerry on the SCG Tour with 22 Open top 8s, 5 wins, 7 Invitational top 8s with 2 Invitational wins. He didn't go back-to-back like Tom did a couple of years ago, but he was the first to do a lot of the stuff that's been done here on the SCG Tour.
One of the absolute best, and in my opinion, the best of the tour when fully engaged. Thompson has a lot of other interests in his life, and his, it vacillates a little bit with Magic sometimes. But when he is locked in, I think if you multiply deck building by playability, who's the most likely person to win a given tournament? And I think at the top of this game, Thompson's better than anyone else we have.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, because this year in 2014 has been so great for Tom. Tom went back-to-back Open wins this year. I think a lot of people forget Gerry went 15-0 in the Swiss of SCG Atlanta this year. Only player to ever do that. He's only ever went back during the old system. He's the only player to ever win 2 Opens in one weekend.
Yep.
Back when we were doing things that way. He was the first player to ever win 2 Invitationals. Now, of course, Tom did go back-to-back Invitational wins in 2014. He went back-to-back Open wins this year in 2016. But Gerry's the first to do a lot.
Yep.
On this tour. And as you said, and I agree with, when he is well engaged and he wants to be the very best at what he's doing here, he is very, very difficult to beat.
The closest that I ever came in my brief and not particularly celebrated SCG Tour career to doing the back-to-back was lost playing for top 8 and top forward in a weekend.
Yeah.
And at the end, I felt like, man, I kind of was just winning the whole weekend.
Yeah.
And it's not that's not even close to winning both events.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't even remember 17-4. I don't know. Like it's a lot of wins and not that many losses, and that's not even close to winning both.
Yeah. I did something similar in Seattle a couple of years ago. Got 4th in the Standard Open and 9th place on Breakers Legacy Open. I'll tell you this much: I was exhausted.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how anyone's winning 2 tournaments in one weekend. I was beat. Molten Vortex is where Tom is going to start. Thompson. He'll draw a card. He's on the draw here, up a game.
This is essentially just one more lock piece in the event that Ross has Loam going.
Here's a Ponder. This is a great way, the Molten Vortex, to take care of young Pyromancer, Delver Secrets. Some of the smaller threats can work its way towards taking care of a Gurmag Angler. I think a lot has to go right for that to be the case.
Even in the absence of Loam, this is going to be really good against a percentage of Thompson's draws, just because he's leaning a lot on Young Pyromancer and Deathrite Shaman for enough pressure or enough disruption. If Ross gets this going unchecked with Loam, forget about it. Thompson can't hang in that sort of game.
Dark Depth's the draw. Looks like Tom has quite a few copies of Gamble in hand. Punishing Fire 2.
Sculpt the hand you want, kind of.
He's also got a
with some caveats.
Yeah. Well, this is actually a gamble now. He could lose some things that he actually wants to keep. Most of the time in lands, gamble is anything but his hand has kind of worked itself into such a way where it might be.
It's also just dangerous post-board because Thompson has access to surgical extraction. Your Loams are a lot more vulnerable than they are game 1. And, let's say you go for Loam here, you lose it, and gets tapped by surgical extraction. Game can be very hard to win at that point.
1 through 6. A little roll of the die. Card number 1. Goodbye, Punishing Fire.
That's also not a bad target for surgical extraction.
Tom gambled for a Life in the Loam. Barbarian Ring over there, too. For those very seasoned lands players.
And this is another spot where Thompson might try to snap Ross off with a Wasteland if he has hit. Because, again, he's cast Molten Vortex. He's cast Gamble. He doesn't have a land cheat. And he's only got so many cards to work with. So you might cut him off of having enough mana to work with. You may cut off his only green source. So even though you don't think of Wasteland being good against lands because they have so many lands, they have Loam going, it doesn't always work. In spots like this, it can be quite good.
It's time for another gamble here from the boss. He's going to search for Grove of the Burn Willows.
And now the Wasteland play is really attractive because he's down yet another card.
It starts looking pretty good now. Curious to see what Tom is going to lose here to the gamble. 4 cards in hand. We'll be going down to 3 here momentarily. Dark Depths.
Also a very good surgical extraction target.
Yes.
Without that weapon in the deck, Thompson has a shot to play a longer game.
Lightning Bolt to draw. Here's a Brainstorm from Gerry.
And you can see Thompson right now, both Surgical Extraction and Wasteland potentially are good enough for him that he just wants to cantrip right now. He's got a lot of really high leverage draws. Looks like he's boarded in the Ensnaring Bridge as well.
2 cards will be going back here in just a moment.
I'm skeptical of something that is 3 mana and that passive, but again, it is an answer to Thespian Sage Dark Depths.
Things can line up in such a way where it can work itself into the equation.
It will definitely have moments.
Yeah.
And a lot of this just may be a function of Thompson having a lot of spot removal in his deck that he just needs to cut because it doesn't do anything. Bridge at least has a high ceiling in some games, even though it's not going to happen all that often.
Bloodstained Mire here from Thompson will make it a beautiful brainstorm as he searches up an underground sea, able to shuffle away the garbage. Get himself, hopefully, some fresh draw steps, not see those cards again. And now here's a ponder. He might be on the hunt for Surgical, as you mentioned. Deathrite Shaman among those cards. Keep in mind, Thompson does have a copy of Gitaxian Probe in hand.
Yep, so he gets a shuffle here and get a redraw, and also probe. So he's got a lot of looks at Surgical Extraction. And you can tell Thompson knows that there is a window here where if he's able to find it, he can take away one of Ross's critical pieces.
Mystery card on the way. Force of Will. And now he'll just pass the turn back over to Ross. Mox Diamond the draw. See where this takes Ross. Again, now he's not working with a lot of cards. Grove, Stage, Mox, and Loam. Punishing Fire and Dark Depths in the graveyard. Already resolved 2 gambles this game, and of course the Molten Vortex on the battlefield. Here's a Mox. He'll discard Thespian Stage. Now he'll play Loam. We sometimes see players counter Loam in spots like this.
Well, I can respect countering Loam if your plan is to try to cantrip up and get to Surgical next turn.
Yep.
Cut off this Loam. And now, if you're able to cut off the Loam, I mean, Ross has a card in hand, nothing of note on the battlefield. That's a very winnable game.
He's got Grove in hand as well. He's going to play the Grove.
Yeah. Ross has expended a lot of resources setting up Loam plus the right types of lock pieces. If he doesn't have access to Loam, he's got a lot of nonsense in play.
Draw. It's a fetch land. The thing, too, is with Gerry searching what feels like so deeply for Surgical Extraction, he's got no pressure really going on at this stage.
But if he finds Surgical, I think he'll be fine.
Here's Ponder. Ross is going to give Gerry Thompson a life and return the Punishing Fire. 3 cards here for Thompson. Gitaxian Probe among them. It's a shuffle again. Not what he was looking for.
The flip side of this is if Thompson can't break up the Loam right now, things get pretty dire.
Yes.
Because he's got no pressure, and the Molten Vortex is going to shut off a lot of what Thompson can do for the remainder of the game. There's already Dark Depths down there. It gets bleak really fast.
Mystery card coming. Just a Badlands. And now that hand is basically empty. There's a Lightning Bolt and 4 lands.
Yeah. Thompson has also flooded out,
Yes.
which is a factor here as well. But now I think things are going to get pretty bleak.
He'll play a Scalding Tarn, pass the turn back. Ross is going to dredge his life from the Loam. Punishing Fire, Glacial Chasm, and a Bajuka Bog are the cards that'll go to the graveyard. The very powerful Sorcery will go back to his hand. And now he'll prepare to start doing what his deck does best, which is resolve life from the Loam. Tried to last turn, got it countered. Going to try again this turn, which is what makes the card so appealing and so good in this deck. And I'm curious to see which lands he wants to target. He can go right towards Stage and Depths. There's a Bajuka Bog. There's a Glacial Chasm down there. No Wasteland just yet for him to go after Gerry Thompson's lands, but there are real options. And to note, we talked about the Ensnaring Bridge a little bit earlier. Thompson shuffled that away.
Well, I think the problem with Ensnaring Bridge is it's predicated on pressure. He's got a lot of cards in his deck. You know, the Diabolic Edict, I think, qualifies. The Forcible qualifies. If Thompson is doing other powerful things, well, that card might be good enough. But over the long haul, if it's just a control game, Ross is not going to get locked out by those cards. He can just reassemble, go again, find some other route to victory, whatever.
Well, look what showed up to the party finally. Surgical Extraction. The question, of course, is it too late now?
Without other help, now potentially Diabolic Edict is live, or your Ensnaring Bridge is live.
Sure.
So it's a piece, but certainly last turn would have been a lot better than this turn.
Yeah. Gerry is going to give, Tom is going to give Gerry a life. Wants to get back a punishing fire, and Thompson has drawn that surgical extraction he was digging for so much over the past couple of turns. Can he find a way through the 2020 or Life in the Loam or Punishing Fire and potentially all three?
It's a lot.
Yeah, now
He's got
it
to
is.
fight through a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Brainstorm could be up to the task, though. Let's see if he finds one of those over the course of this game. Here is Surgical Extraction. He'll pay the mana for it. And we will confirm what the target's going to be here for Surgical Extraction. He's going to go after Punishing Fire. So maybe the thought process here is, and this is actually important before I get to the thought process part, get some info about how Tom's sideboarding. You see Crows and Grip. You see Sphere of Resistance. Maybe you didn't expect that.
Yep, interesting.
He doesn't, okay, he's got Tracker, but you see how Gerry's pulling him forward? Wants to know, okay, how many of each of these things do you have? Did you bring in all 4 Trackers? Only 2. You know, how many Spheres? Did you bring in Chalice? Any of that stuff. You get some information here.
And I think the Tireless Trackers are, you know, they are sort of an anti-surgical extraction card, even though they don't necessarily read that way. Ross can't be confident he's going to be able to combo out post-board. It's a lot harder in the face of surgical extraction. Tireless Tracker is a card that can just win the game on its own. And if Thompson is slowing the game down, bringing in all these reactive cards, much more likely that Tireless Tracker can, you know, generate a huge advantage and maybe be able to win the game on its own.
What's also interesting, it's not so much about what Tom brought in, it's about maybe what he took out. Is crop rotation out of the deck now, for example? A lot of other things might be gone now from Tom's deck. What lands did he sideboard out to get those trackers and other cards in? Gerry will pass the turn back. Tom will dredge Loam. Depths, Grove, and a Windswept Heath. You see the hand there for Tom Ross. It's face up. Vajuka Bog, Life from the Loam, Dark Depths.
I guess the thinking there, even though I think the Loam is a little bit more threatening, that was Thompson's last opportunity to break up Punishing Fire via surgical extraction for the remainder of the game. He's likely to have other cracks at the Loam, and he can't cut off the first Dark Depths anyway. So a lot of things have to go the right way.
Well, he's got to get he's got to draw something this turn or he's dead.
Right.
You know.
But if he doesn't take care of the Punishing Fire right then, he's just playing through that forever.
Yep.
And his deck does not play through that card very effectively.
Nope. Sure doesn't. Thompson will watch Ross make a 20-20 here. There are outs. Deathrite Shaman is not one of them. And they're all set here. Tom Ross going to win game number 2 here over Gerry Thompson. Lands Grixis Control. They'll get ready for a third one. Gerry digging like crazy for a surgical extraction. It showed up one turn too late, and that changed the whole avenue of the game.
Well, you can see, though, that it's a real weapon he has access to post-board. If he had it in those first couple of turns, backed up by a little bit of pressure, that might have been good enough. But like you said, found it about one turn too late, and by that point, Ross had generated too much of an advantage being able to get his Dark Depths and Thespian Stage online.
You see both players going back to the sideboard. We will certainly do the same here. Tom, he did take out some number of crop rotations. We know he brought in some number of tireless trackers and Crows and Grips. What do you think changes given that he's on the play now? He's on the draw.
I think it makes Sphere of Resistance a lot less attractive. I think it was a little dodgy to begin with, and now much worse. Especially now with showing Sphere of Resistance plus Tireless Tracker, there's more of an incentive for Gerry to leave, potentially some of his permanent destruction in the deck as well. So I think those cards become really dodgy.
Anything change for Gerry here, given that he's on the play?
I don't think so. I think his post-board cards are the same ones are good. Maybe it's worth considering bringing in the Abrupt Decays because you've seen Sphere of Resistance plus Tireless Tracker. That feels a little fringe to me, but certainly Surgical Extraction, the Pithy Needle, and the Diabolic Edict seem good to me like they did in while we were talking about Game 2, and we saw the Ensnaring Bridge as well.
Fair enough. These players get ready here for game number 3. We'll take a moment. We'll talk about the StarCityGames.com newsletter. It is your source, for Match of the Gathering news. A lot going on with this thing, but it is free.
A lot of information on the going-ons of Star City Games with the latest information about the SCG Tour and a selected SCG Tour Match of the Week, exclusive deck lists and advice from many of your favorite columnists, catch up on all the recent events, an exclusive cardboard crack comic, and best of all, signing up is free over at go.starcitygames.com/newsletter.
Bunch of updates here for you as we do get ready for game number 3. Brad Nelson, he won real quick this round. Brad playing Sneak and Show and Legacy. He's tweeting, as so many players are here from the SCGPC this weekend. So make sure you do follow that hashtag so you can see all the going-ons that are taking place during this tournament. He's 2-0 in his group. Jeff Hoagland, he lost the die roll to be 1 turn slow against Infect games 1 and 3. So he falls down to 1-1 as Max Kviti took care of Jeff in his Allurin deck. We've got Todd Anderson defeating Caleb Shear with Sneak and Show. Caleb, of course, playing Storm. So Todd going to tie things up for him. He's 1-1 now. Andrew Tenjum with 4-color Delver. He forced a game 3 against Kevin Jones. They're actually in a 4-color Delver mirror. And Liam Lonergan, the great unknown of this tournament. He defeated Bradley Carpenter 2-1. He played Elves. Bradley Carpenter playing 4-color Delver. So, Tom Ross, a player I guess we'll learn a little bit more about. It feels like we already know everything about the boss, but what I love here is the deck choice. Mm-hmm. It's a real risk. You know, coming into this tournament last year, everyone knew he was going to be on Infect. He played Infect, a little bit different version, but we saw players gun for him. Reed Duke, I'm talking about you if you're watching at home with that Peacekeeper last year or 2 years ago. And, you know, it worked. Now he decided to mix it up.
And there's also a lesson here that, you know, your safe choices aren't necessarily as safe as they may appear. I'm sure Gerry felt that he was making what he would describe as a conservative option, a safe option, playing Grixis Control, and then ends up in a bracket with 2 different lands players. So, again, I think this tournament has shown it's rolling the dice and trying to make risky metagame calls. Doesn't always work, but with the payouts as top-heavy as it is and the prestige of winning the tournament as valuable as it is, it's maybe better to be risky than safe.
It is an interesting selection there from Tom, but I like it. I can appreciate it. He's only got to play 3 rounds with it.
Though you can see, I think, a little bit of the inexperience with the deck there when he's thumbing through the sideboard as he's shuffling up. I think, should I have Sphere Resistance in my deck or not, is not a question that Ross can confidently answer either way.
I agree.
Whereas some more experienced lands players would know one way or the other what types of matchups they wanted that card for.
It's a ponder here for Gerry Thompson, sacrificing Pluto Delta, falls down to 19, get himself a Volcanic Island, and we'll watch him take a look at the top couple of cards. Both players keeping 7 here. And though we don't have a great look at Tom Ross's hand just yet, it does look like they have a lot of lands in it. No surprise there. Force of Will, Gurmag Angler, Baleful Strix. No thank you as Thompson shuffles it away. Looks like Ross does have stage plus depth in hand to be able to present a 2020. How quickly, I think, is the question. But that last card over there in his hand that he keeps hiding, it's a green one, and it could be a mana bond.
And we have not seen Ross have the enabler yet, the cheat.
Brainstorm the draw. We head over to Tom. Picked up a copy of Windswept Teeth.
And mana bonds plus 7 lands is not a bad setup.
Here's a Ghost Quarter. Gerry saying, you want to fire that off? Not yet, says Tom. Deathrite Shaman the draw. Looks like that green card in Tom's hand is a Crows and Grip. For Thompson, he'll play another Ponder. Top couple of cards. 2 Probes and a land. I know you'd keep.
Definitely. He doesn't have a second. He doesn't even have a second land. He's facing down a potential wasteland here.
Thompson will keep a Probe on top. Let's see what Tom is working with here. Stage Depths, Grove, 2 fetch lands and Misty Rainforest, Windswept Teeth, another Ghost Quarter, and a Crows and Grip. That's it. Interesting. Gerry Thompson, basic land count?
I'm looking at 0.
I
think Ross here just wants to race to a fast Dark Depths with the option of Ghost Quartering should that end up being better instead. You know, if Thompson misses a land drop, you might see him just fire all those off.
I would certainly hope so. Thompson will sacrifice polluted delta. What's interesting in a spot like this, though, is if you're Thompson, you want to represent strength. I have lands. I dare you to ghost quarter me. Everything is fine as there's a gamble as a draw step. Ghost quarter me would just set you too far back. Don't even think about it. Looks like Thompson may have dropped a card, shuffle that back in.
Yep. Something slipped out, but both players able to quickly identify which card it was. No harm.
Misty Rainforest land here for Tom Ross. And now we're going to head back over to Thompson. He'll draw a card, Young Pyromancer. That can get the pressure going. That was the recipe for game one.
This is the problem, though, is, Thompson kind of knows where Ross is at right now. He wants to race to a fast start depth with the option to pivot to ghost quartering should that come up. The minute that Thompson misses a land drop, then the information's out.
Things change.
But there's no other line of play for him to take that turn. I mean, he could brainstorm first to try to find a third land, both to have a third land and to keep up the appearances that he could have more. But also with Thompson having a Deathrite Shaman in play, maybe it's just less attractive for Ross to be going on that route anyway.
Here's stage. Tom drew a Tireless Tracker. It's going to pass the turn back right away. Thompson's going to remove a land for Deathrite Shaman, and I think we're going to see a Brainstorm here in just a moment. Actually, it's just going to be a Lightning Bolt. It's time to race. He'll make a 1/1, deal Ross 3 points of damage. Thompson will untap. Thompson will draw.
I mean, especially with Closing Grip in the hand to answer a potential ensnaring bridge, this line that Tom is taking is basically saying Diabolic Edict or bust.
Here's another Young Pyromancer. Remove a land. Brainstorm. Couple triggers.
But if Gerry can find his one copy of Diabolic Edict, he's got a lot of pressure.
Well, he picked up a black card. It was a Gurmag Angler. That's not what the doctor ordered there for Thompson. Gonna put a couple of cards back. But can he pressure enough? Not easy to pressure past 2020. Brainstorm in the graveyard. Sacrifice. This is Gurmag Angler. Of course, he has to search up a land, be able to cast the Angler, attack here for 3. A little bit of shortcutting. Get a Badlands. I mean, look, he's presented as much as he can.
This is what I can do.
Yeah. Like he's presenting all that he can to try to kill Tom. Tom's going to sacrifice the Misty Rainforest here. He can deal 9 next turn with the Deathrite Shaman activation.
Assuming that his Gurmag Angler gets blocked.
Yeah, that's my assumption. Is that's the one that gets blocked. Tom is going to copy something with this stage.
He is definitely drawing to Diabolic Edict, that's for sure.
Yep.
And not ensnaring bridge, as we know.
Yep.
As Tom has the Crozan grip.
Gamble the draw.
And here it is.
Yeah. Either you can beat it or you can't. He's going to make it right now so he doesn't have to worry about Wasteland. 2020, you got an answer or not. Thompson will untap. Big draw step here. Gataxian Probe means redraws.
Love a redraw. Baleful Strix is a card here also.
Oh, Baleful Strix very much plays. Well, Crozan Grip just takes care of that. Yep, so
no good.
Doesn't play great. I mean, it would be a redraw. Couple more tokens. You see the hand here for Tom. Doesn't do all that much.
Well, it insulates from some of Thompson's outs.
Yes.
But Diabolic Edict is still very good here.
He's drawn a Wasteland. Wasteland, he'll play. He'll show.
Yep, 1 turn too late.
Yep.
Just needed a strip mine to keep Ross off of 1 turn.
Feels like that's been the story here for Gerry all match long. It's been 1 turn too late with the Surgical Extraction, 1 turn too late with the Wasteland. He'll do the math to see if there's any way that he can slide by this, but he'll play the Wasteland, and that's going to do it. Tom Ross is going to win this match over Gerry Thompson, 2-1. Lands will take care of Grixis Control. It was a tough matchup and a tough pairing there for Gerry. A very good matchup for Tom, and what's interesting about that third game is I believe Tom, no spells?
No spells.
Just, I'm going to keep a hand. I'm going to do this thing with the 2020. I'm going to hope it's good. And it was, because Gerry doesn't have a lot of answers.